I walked out of prison after 5 years and felt emptiness. Not relief, not joy, just a hollow stillness inside, like I hadn't been part of my own body for a long time, and now it was walking forward without me. The world felt too bright. People moved too fast, and I felt like a shadow walking among the living. For years, I thought I was dreaming of freedom, but when it came, I realized I had no idea what to do with it. Because freedom isn't gates opening. It's silence where you stop lying to yourself. My name doesn't matter. I'm 35. Today I was released. Not a hero, not a monster, not a man looking for pity. Just someone who once gave up his right to choose, and along the way, gave up the truth inside himself. I won't tell you what I did. Not yet. Not because I'm hiding, but because that's not where this story begins. Maybe, if you stick around, I'll tell you near the end. Because then, maybe, it won't sound like an excuse. It'll be part of the whole picture. See, a sentence is just paper. But shame, that's what sleeps beside you every night. That's what wakes you up cold and sweating. I spent 5 years inside a system where you're either an animal or dead. But you know what's worse? Walking out and realizing you don't know who you are anymore. Inside, at least you have a role. Out here, you have yourself. And if you're lying to yourself, you don't need walls to be imprisoned. I stood by the gates that morning. Cold air hit my face like I was breathing for the first time. The guard beside me said nothing. He's seen hundreds of men like me. He knows looking a man in the eye on his release day is like asking if he'll ever come back. They handed me a black plastic bag, old jeans, a phone that wouldn't even turn on, a bus pass, $47. No hugs, no goodbyes, just empty asphalt, a gray sky, and a voice in my head whispering, "Well, you wanted freedom. Here it is." But I understood something then. Freedom isn't walking out. Freedom is saying the truth to yourself. Who you are, what you did, and who you're never gonna be again. I didn't know where to go. Didn't know what to call. But I knew one thing for sure. I'm done living in lies. Not theirs, not mine.
I didn't rush. I didn't even move for a while. Just stood there like I was waiting for someone to tell me what to do. That's the thing prison does. It rewires your instincts. You don't make decisions. You wait for orders, for routines, for permission. Out here, no one tells you anything. The silence is louder than the alarms inside. Eventually, I walked to the bus stop. I knew where it was because they pointed once, without looking at me. I sat on the bench. A man in a suit looked at his phone. A woman chewed gum and stared into nowhere. No one looked at me. That should have felt like freedom, but instead, it felt like I didn't exist. I kept looking at my hands. Same skin, same fingers, but somehow they didn't feel like mine. The bus came. I stepped on. The driver didn't care who I was. I paid. Sat by the window. Watched the streets blur past. I had no plan, no destination. Just a vague address of a halfway house written on a folded paper in my back pocket. The city felt too fast, too shiny, too casual. People laughed, talked, smiled, all those things I hadn't done in years. I felt like I was watching life from behind a thick piece of glass, a ghost among the living. I thought about calling someone, my brother maybe, but I didn't. I hadn't spoken to him in 7 years. He stopped visiting after the first 18 months. Maybe I don't blame him. Maybe I do. I don't know. What do you even say to someone who buried the version of you that existed before you went inside? Hey, I'm back? That doesn't work. The bus kept moving. I kept staring out the window, and all I could think was, I don't belong here. Not in the city, not in my clothes, not even in my own head. I didn't want to go back to prison, but I didn't know how to live out here either. And that was scarier than any cell I ever sat in.
The halfway house was a faded old building that looked like it had given up trying to be anything more. One flickering light by the entrance, a buzzed-in door, and a guy behind a desk who barely lifted his eyes when I walked in. He slid over a clipboard without a word. I signed. He pointed upstairs. Room 302, curfew's 10, no guests, don't make problems. That was it. That's all I got. I climbed the stairs. The hallway smelled like old carpet and bleach. My room had a metal-framed bed, a desk with a cracked top, and a window that wouldn't quite close. It was cleaner than a cell, but emptier. I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at the wall. The silence felt heavy, like it had weight. I could hear someone coughing through the wall, someone laughing downstairs. My bag, the plastic one, was at my feet. I didn't open it. I just sat there. Not tired, not hungry, just hollow. I lay back, closed my eyes, and just like that, my mind dragged me backward to my first night in prison. Cold concrete, no pillow, the smell of sweat and disinfectant, the sound of metal slamming somewhere far off, the distant screaming. That night, I remember holding my breath for so long, just so I wouldn't have to hear myself breathing. And now, here I was, years later, in a bed, technically free. But it felt like the same silence, the same waiting, the same version of myself that didn't know where he was or why it felt like he died and no one told his body. I opened my eyes. The ceiling above me had a water stain that looked like a face. And I remember thinking, freedom feels a lot like isolation, just with thinner walls.
The next morning, I woke up early. Not because I wanted to. My body was just used to the rhythm of count times and noise. Except here, there was no noise. Just the creak of pipes and the low hum of a vending machine down the hall. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Then I stood up, washed my face in the tiny sink, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked normal. That was the strangest part. I didn't look like someone who had been locked away for half a decade. No scars on the face, no tattoos. Just a man who looked a little older than he should. I put on the same clothes they gave me. Jeans that barely fit, a hoodie that smelled like dust, and I left the room. Outside, the street was already moving. Cars, people, city sounds. I walked a few blocks, hands in my pockets, eyes low. I didn't want to stand out, didn't want to be seen. I spotted a grocery store and went in, and that's when it hit me. The lights were so bright. Everything was loud. Not the people, but the colors, the signs, the music playing overhead. I froze. I had no idea what to get. Bread? Milk? Something simple. But there were 10 kinds of everything, and all of it felt like too much. A woman burst past me, said, "Excuse me," and I flinched. Not from fear, just instinct. I stood in front of the bread aisle for 10 minutes, just staring. My hands started to sweat, my chest got tight, and I realized I couldn't do it. I couldn't pick a loaf of bread. I left the cart, walked out without buying anything, and just kept walking.
I ended up sitting on a bench in some small park a few blocks down. I watched kids play, watched people walk dogs, and I thought, I don't belong here. I don't belong anywhere right now, and no one sees it, but inside, I'm still locked up, just with brighter walls.
I came back to the room just before noon. I had nothing in my hands. No food, no bag. Just a tight feeling in my chest and the kind of silence that follows you around like a shadow. The door clicked shut behind me, and for a second it felt like a cell door. Same weight, same sound, different world. I sat down on the bed and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since I left that morning. The room was still. Same peeling paint, same broken desk. I stared at the floor. There was a stain near the edge of the mattress. I traced it with my eyes, again and again, like it was some kind of map. My phone, the old one, was still dead. I hadn't charged it. Part of me didn't want to. Part of me liked the idea of being unreachable, invisible. I thought about my brother again. Thought about dialing his number from the landline on the hallway. But what would I say? Hey, it's me? What does that even mean anymore? The version of me he knew was buried a long time ago. And the one sitting in this room? I wasn't sure he deserved to be heard from yet. I leaned back on the bed. The ceiling above me was cracked now that I looked closer. Tiny spiderweb lines spreading out like fractures in glass. I felt like that. Like something had hit me years ago, and the break just kept growing, slow and quiet until it covered everything. I closed my eyes. The noise outside, the cars, the city, sounded distant, like a movie playing in another room. And I thought, for the first time, maybe I don't have to go back to who I was. Maybe that's not even possible. Maybe that's the point. But what comes after that? Who am I if I'm not running from what I did and not trying to become who I used to be? I didn't have the answer. I just lay there, listening to the weight of nothing, hoping the silence would teach me something I hadn't been ready to hear before.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. And somewhere between the silence and the hum of a distant TV down the hall, I thought of Ray. He was one of the old guys. Been inside since the 80s, maybe longer. No one really knew his full story, just that he wasn't ever getting out. Life sentence, no appeals left. But Ray never talked like he was stuck. He moved slow, talked slow, always had this strange peace about him. Like the world had already ended for him a long time ago, and what was left was just extra time. We weren't close, not really. He wasn't the kind of guy who made friends, but sometimes, during late nights in the block, we'd talk. Not about crimes, not about regrets, just about being. One night, lights were out, and I couldn't sleep. I asked him, "Don't you ever think about who you were before?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Nah, that guy's dead. And the version of me that came after, he was too busy pretending not to care." I didn't know what to say. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe. And then he said something I never forgot. "You know what prison really is?" I said, "A cage?" He laughed, quiet, tired. "Nah. Prison is when you lie to yourself every day and call it surviving." I didn't get it back then. I thought he was being poetic or maybe bitter. But now, lying in this halfway room, free but hollow, I finally understood. Out here, the walls are gone, but the lies, they stay. They follow you. And if you're not careful, they become your voice. Ray died 2 years before I got out, liver cancer. They let him rot in the infirmary with a busted fan and no air conditioning. I wasn't allowed to visit him, but someone slipped me a note he wrote before he passed. It said, "Keep your head low.
but don't forget to look inside once in a while. You'll rot faster lying to yourself than you ever would in a cage. That note stayed folded in my Bible. I didn't believe in God, but I believed in that sentence.
The next morning, I left the room again. Same clothes, same hoodie, but something felt different. Not better, not lighter, just quieter. Ray's words were still in my head. Prison is when you lie to yourself every day and call it surviving. I didn't want to survive anymore. I wanted to feel something real, even if it hurt. I walked the same blocks as before, but slower this time. Looked around more. The city wasn't as loud today. Or maybe I was just listening differently. I passed a coffee shop, small, local, with big windows and chipped paint. I stood outside for a minute, watching people inside. Students on laptops, a woman reading a book, a man in a tie stirring his drink like it was a ritual. No one looked like me, but no one looked dangerous either. I opened the door. A bell rang. No one turned. I stepped in. The air smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. I stood in line, my hands sweating. The menu above the counter had so many words I didn't recognize. I wasn't sure what half of them meant. A girl behind the counter smiled and said, "What can I get you?" I froze. Then I said, "Just black coffee." She nodded. "Size?" Regular." She smiled again. I paid, took the cup, sat near the window. The coffee burned my tongue. I didn't care. I watched the street, people passing, living. I tried to sit like them, look like them, just a man with a coffee on a Tuesday. But I could feel it in my bones, that sense of being out of sync, like I was acting in a play I haven't rehearsed for. I sipped the coffee slowly, both hands around the cup like it might ground me somehow. And for a few minutes, it worked. I didn't feel like I belonged, but I didn't feel like I was drowning either. That was new. That was something. Back in the room, I sat at the desk and stared at the cracked surface. There was a pen in the drawer, half dried out, and a notepad with cheap paper. I didn't know why I reached for it. Habit, maybe. Or maybe something in me needed to come out. I hadn't written a letter in years, but I thought of her. Emma, that was her name. She started writing to me 2 years into my sentence. Said she found my name through some prison outreach thing. At first I didn't answer, and I sent a short reply. Nothing deep, just words. But she kept writing, told me about her days, her dog, her favorite songs. Said she didn't want anything from me, just to remind me that I still existed somewhere outside those walls. I stopped responding after a while, not because she did anything wrong, but because I didn't know how to be seen like that. Soft, human. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'm still not. But I pulled the paper closer and started to write. Emma, I don't know if this will ever reach you, or if you'd even care. I'm out now. I walked through the gates and I'm on the outside. Technically free. But I feel more lost now than I ever did in that cell. At least in there I knew what the rules were. Out here it's all invisible lines. I'm scared of stepping on one and disappearing again. I remember the way you talked about the sky. You said it had colors where you lived that didn't exist anywhere else. I couldn't imagine that back then. Gray was all I saw. Now I look up and I think maybe you were right. There's more than gray. I just don't know how to hold it yet. I stopped writing. My hand shook a little. I read the letter once, then folded it. I didn't put it in an envelope, didn't write her address, just left it on the desk. It wasn't for her. Not really. It was for me.
proof that I could still speak without hiding behind silence.
That night, I couldn't sit still. The room felt smaller than usual, the air heavier. I needed to move. I grabbed my hoodie and went outside. The city had a different face at night. Quieter, slower, but not softer. Just tired. Streetlights buzzed. Trash rustled in gutters. A car alarm screamed somewhere blocks away, but no one seemed to care. I walked without direction, hands in pockets, hood up. Just a shadow blending into the dark. A few blocks from the halfway house, I saw him, sitting on the steps of a closed laundromat. Layers of clothes, a blanket wrapped tight around his shoulders. His beard was wild, eyes half shut. He looked up when I passed. Didn't say anything at first, just watched. I hesitated. Something in his stare felt familiar. Not recognition, just sameness. I stopped, reached into my pocket. I had 2 cigarettes left. Ones I'd picked up earlier, more out of habit than craving. I held one out. He took it without a word. I sat on the edge of the steps, a few feet away. We lit up. Silence between us, but not uncomfortable. He exhaled slow, then said, "You just get out?" I didn't answer right away. Then I nodded. "Yeah." He smiled a little, just at the corner of his mouth. "Thought so. You still look like you're waiting for someone to tell you when to eat." I almost laughed, but it stuck in my throat. He was right. I didn't even realize I'd been sitting up straight, legs close, hands still, like I was back on a metal bench in the yard. I looked at him. He didn't look broken. He looked accepted, like he knew where he stood in the world, or maybe just stopped fighting it. He took a long drag and said, "Out here ain't no softer, just quieter when it kills you." Then he stood up, adjusted the blanket on his shoulders, and walked into the dark. I sat there a while longer, smoking, watching the sidewalk, and thinking how strange it was to feel more seen by a stranger in 30 seconds than by most people in my whole life.
I got back to the room sometime after midnight. My head was full, but my body felt like stone. I sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the wall, and then, almost without thinking, reached for the hallway phone. There was a payphone down by the stairs. I hadn't touched it since I got here. I walked down, quarter in hand, heart louder than my footsteps, picked up the receiver, and felt heavier than it looked. I dialed his number. I still remembered it. Muscle memory, I guess. A pause, then ringing. 1, 2, 3, 4. My fingers gripped the receiver too tight. I hadn't heard his voice in what, 7 years? 8? After the first year, the visits stopped. After the second, the letters stopped. After that, it was just silence. I used to tell myself I didn't blame him, that maybe he had his reasons, but deep down, I think I blamed both of us. The phone kept ringing. And then his voice. Not live, just the machine. "This is Mark. Leave a message." Beep. I froze. I heard myself breathing. Nothing else. Not even traffic. Just my breath and the dull echo of the hallway. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again, but no words came. My throat locked, my chest clenched. I stood there, phone to my ear, listening to static, holding on to the possibility of a sentence I couldn't say. And then I hung up, slowly, like the weight of it could break something. I stood there for a few more seconds, then went back to my room, sat on the bed, stared at my hands, and thought, maybe forgiveness isn't something you ask for. Maybe it's something you grow into, one failed call at a time.
My first day inside wasn't what I expected. No fights, no yelling, no one shoved me or made me bleed. The movies lie. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. That was the part that shook me. The quiet was thick, like humidity you couldn't breathe through. They processed me fast, took my prints, my clothes, my name, gave me a number, a jumpsuit, a thin mattress rolled up like a joke, and then a guard walked me down a hallway that got colder with every step. The smell was what hit me first. Disinfectant, sweat, metal, a kind of sour air that clung to your skin. My cell was small, bare, 2 bunks, a toilet, nothing else. My cellmate didn't look at me, just nodded once and rolled over on his bunk. That was it. No welcome, no warning, just silence. I stood there for a minute, holding my mattress like it meant something. Then I placed it on the top bunk, sat down, listened. The sounds came in layers. Footsteps far away, a cough down the block, the occasional distant clang of metal. But underneath it all, silence. That kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I remember looking at my hands, thinking, okay, so this is where it starts. I wasn't scared of being hurt. I was scared of disappearing, of waking up one day and realizing I wasn't there anymore. Just a name on a door, a routine, a shape that walked when told and sat when told. That first night, I didn't cry. I didn't talk. I just lay there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, counting cracks in the paint, trying to remember what my voice sounded like. And even then, on day 1, I could feel it. Something inside me curling up, going quiet. Like a part of me already knew that to survive in here, you had to go dark. You had to stop being whoever you were and become less.
There was a night, maybe 3 weeks in, when something inside me cracked. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with screams or fists or broken bones. It came quietly, like a whisper turning into wind and then into nothing. I remember sitting on the edge of my bunk after lights out. The block was dark, humming with distant voices and the occasional shout. My cellmate was snoring. I stared at the floor, at a single chipped tile near my foot. I couldn't stop looking at it. My thoughts were a loop. I wasn't thinking about getting out, or surviving, or even being safe. I was thinking about how tired I felt. Not tired like sleep, but tired of holding my own weight. Tired of pretending I still had shape. I wanted to vanish. Not die, not in the dramatic, final way, but disappear from myself. Be somewhere where my name didn't follow me, where my voice didn't sound like gravel, where my breath didn't feel borrowed. I remember pressing my palms into my eyes so hard it felt like I'd crush something inside. I wanted the pressure. I wanted sensation, because everything else felt numb. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just sat there, holding my face, trying to remember what it felt like to be human. That was the night I stopped fantasizing about freedom, because I realized I wasn't even sure I deserved it. I hadn't spoken to anyone in days. I barely spoke to myself. I was shrinking, folding, becoming smaller and smaller until all that was left was skin and habit. That's the danger of a place like that. Not the violence, not the rules, but the slow erosion of self. The way you begin to let go of your own reflection. Not because you hate it, but because you forget why it mattered. That night, I lay back on my bunk and stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. And I thought, if this is who I am now, then maybe the version of me that walked in here really did die. And I didn't even say goodbye.
Back in the room, I sat at the desk, staring out the window. The glass was fogged at the corners. Outside, the city moved like it always did. Cars, buses, lights flickering across tired streets. I'd been sitting there for maybe an hour, not thinking, not moving, just breathing. And then, without planning it, without trying to build up to anything, I heard myself say it. Quiet, barely louder than the hum in the walls. I don't know who I am. The words just slipped out. They didn't echo. They didn't break anything. But they were real. My voice sounded strange in the room, like something foreign had crawled out of me. I waited. For what? I'm not sure. Maybe for shame? Maybe for relief. Neither came, just silence again. But something had shifted. I said it again, louder this time. I don't know who I am. Not as a question, not as a crisis, just a truth. I stood up, walked to the mirror above the sink, looked at my reflection, not for answers, but just to see. My face looked the same, but something in my eyes, not softer, but less hidden. I traced the edge of the sink with my fingers. Cold, solid, real. I kept talking. Not to the mirror, not to God, just to the air. I messed up. Bad. And I didn't fix it, and I don't know if I ever will. But I'm here. I'm still here. My voice cracked on the last part, not from emotion, just disuse. I hadn't heard my own truth in years. It felt like opening a door in a house that had been locked for too long. Dust in the air, light hitting corners that forgot how to be seen. I didn't feel healed or strong, but I felt present, and that was something. I sat back down, facing the window. The night outside hadn't changed, but now I could feel it breathing with me. Like, for the first time, the silence wasn't pushing me down. It was holding space for me, making room.
I opened the drawer and pulled out the Bible, the one I never read, the one I kept only because Ray's letter was inside. I slid it out, still folded into 4 soft creases, the paper worn at the edges like it had been handled 100 times. Maybe it had. I didn't open it right away, just held it in my hands for a while. It was the only thing I brought from inside that wasn't clothing or scars. Ray gave it to me 3 weeks before he died, slipped it through the slot in my cell door without a word. I knew what it was. I didn't read it at first. I wasn't ready. I don't think he expected me to be. But I read it the night after he passed, and again after my last day behind the fence. And now, tonight, it felt different. I unfolded it slowly, like it might tear if I rushed. His handwriting was rough but steady, same as he was. I read, "You'll think the world owes you clarity. It doesn't. You'll want people to understand. They won't. You'll want peace to come fast. It won't. But if you're lucky, you'll get quiet, the kind that lets you hear your own voice again." I stopped there, sat with it. He always talked in that way. Simple words, heavy meaning. I kept reading. "You're not your charge. You're not the worst thing you did. But if you pretend it didn't happen, it owns you. Don't be the guy who rots on the outside just to look alive. Keep your head low. Look inside once in a while. You'll rot faster lying to yourself than you ever did in a cage." I folded the letter slowly, placed it back in the Bible, not as a symbol, just as a place, a safe spot. I didn't cry, but something in my chest shifted, like a rope that had been tight for years suddenly gave an inch. I looked at the window. My reflection looked back. I whispered, "I hear you, Ray." And for the first time in a long time, I meant it.
The next morning, I didn't stay in bed. I didn't sit by the window. I just got up, put on the same hoodie, and walked outside. The streets didn't look different. The people weren't slower. The noise was still there. Cars, buses, footsteps.
fragments of lives moving past me. But something inside had shifted. I wasn't walking like I was hiding. I wasn't scanning every face for judgment. I was just walking, moving, existing in the open. I didn't have a destination, no appointment, no goal. I passed the same coffee shop as before, thought about going in, but kept walking. I wasn't avoiding it, I just didn't need it today. I turned corners without thinking, letting my feet choose. Ended up in a small side street I didn't recognize. There was a mural on the wall, peeling paint, bright colors beneath dirt and time. A woman's face looking up toward the sky. Something about it stopped me. I stood there, hands in pockets, staring. And I thought, maybe that's all I need to be right now. Someone who's still looking up, not asking for light, not demanding answers, just refusing to stay face down forever. I sat on a bench nearby, let the sun hit my face, let the air move through me, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to tell me what to do next. I wasn't healed, I wasn't free from memory or shame or doubt, but I was here, in the open, breathing. And for a man who once begged to disappear, that felt like something close to grace.
I didn't expect the message. It came later that day, after I got back to the room, after I showered and sat down to eat a sandwich I didn't even remember buying. My phone, an old thing I finally charged, buzzed once. No name, just a number. For a second, I thought it was a scam. Then I saw the area code, his city. I opened it. One sentence, that's all. I know you're out. When you're ready, I'm here. I stared at the screen for a long time, read it again and again. It didn't say, I forgive you. It didn't ask where I'd been or what I'd done. It didn't beg or accuse or explain. It just said what it said. And somehow, that was heavier than any long apology or tearful reunion, because it meant he still had space for me, even if he didn't know what to do with me yet, even if I didn't know what to do with myself. I sat back in the chair. The sandwich went cold. The noise outside faded. My ears rang like they used to in the yard after too much silence, too much heat. I didn't cry, but my throat tightened. I didn't smile, but my jaw unlocked. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wasn't ready to speak back into that space. But I left the message there. Didn't delete it. Didn't bury it. Just let it sit in my phone like a quiet door left open. And in that small, wordless gap between what was and what could be, I breathed. And for once, I didn't feel like I was drowning in the past. I was just floating. And maybe that was enough for now.
That night, I sat at the desk with the lamp on low. The hum of the building filled the silence. Pipes, footsteps in the hallway, the wind pressing against the window. I stared at a blank page in the notebook. I wasn't trying to write anything. I just needed to see space, empty space, a clean place where something new could begin, even if I didn't know what that was yet. The message from my brother was still in my pocket, written on the back of a receipt I used to jot it down. I read it again. When you're ready, I'm here. It echoed in me, not loud, but steady. I looked at the page, thought about writing a plan, a list, a timeline, but I couldn't. The future still felt too big, too blurry. But for the first time, I wanted to reach toward it, not escape, not rebuild the past, just move forward. I whispered to myself, what would it even look like? I thought, maybe a job, something quiet, something real. Maybe renting a room without peeling paint. Maybe having a phone I don't flinch at.
Maybe waking up without thinking about who I used to be. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know if I'd ever fully feel like I deserved to, but the idea didn't scare me as much as it used to. It felt far away, but not impossible. I didn't write anything on the page, just stared at it. Let it be blank. Let it exist. Sometimes that's all it takes. The willingness to look at something empty and not turn away. I closed the notebook, stood up, looked in the mirror one more time. My eyes didn't flinch, and I thought quietly, not as a promise, but as a seed. Maybe I can be someone else. Not a new person, not a better man, just me, without the mask, without the noise. Just me.
There was a guy I used to see every day inside. His name was Travis. Mid-40s, clean cut. Looked like he could have been an accountant or a mechanic. Nothing about him said prison. He didn't talk much, ate alone, walked laps in the yard, slow and steady, like he was tracing the edge of something invisible. He wasn't a lifer. Had 5 years like me. Got caught in something with his business. Fraud, I think. But he never talked about it. Most guys bragged, exaggerated, relied. Travis didn't say anything. What got to me wasn't what he did. It was what he became. First month, he looked like he was holding on. Second month, he stopped shaving. Third month, he stopped reading. Then one day, he just stopped making eye contact. Like even seeing reflections of himself in others was too much. I watched it happen. Slow fade. One day he sat in the yard and didn't move for 2 hours. Just stared at a spot on the fence. I passed by and nodded. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. I asked him once if he was okay. He turned to me and said, "I think I stopped existing a few days ago, but nobody told my body yet." That line never left me. I still hear it. Nobody told my body yet. After that, I watched him like I was watching my own warning sign. I knew if I let myself sink too deep into silence, into routine, into pretending none of it mattered, I'd end up like him. Not dead, just erased. Eventually, Travis got transferred to another unit. I never saw him again. Never heard what happened. Maybe he made it out. Maybe not. But I still think about him sometimes, especially now, because I know how close I came to that same edge. And the truth is, part of me's still there, still tracing the fence line in my mind, still staring at a point in the distance, trying to remember what it felt like to be real.
I was sitting by the window again, just watching the street. Same bench, same traffic, same worn-out corner store across the road. And I noticed something. The way I sat, the way I held my shoulders, rigid, still, like I was waiting for something to happen. Like I didn't want to take up too much space. I remembered how, inside, we moved differently. Every step had weight. Every glance had purpose. You never moved too fast, made you look nervous. Never too slow, made you look weak. You kept your arms close, eyes forward, head still. That stayed with me. Even now I walk like I'm being watched, like a camera is always overhead. My footsteps are too quiet. My eyes scan without thinking. I flinch at sudden sounds. I sit on the edge of chairs, never leaning back fully, like I don't trust the weight to hold me. Tension lives in my spine. My hands rest on my knees, fingers slightly curled, not clenched, not loose, ready. And the worst part? I don't remember what it felt like to move without that.
I used to run downstairs, 2 at a time. I used to laugh with my head tilted back. I used to stretch out across a couch like I owned it. Now I fold. Now I tighten. Now I shrink. It's like my body's still behind the walls, even if my feet aren't. I caught my reflection in the glass and saw it clearly. How I sit like I'm in a holding cell, like I'm waiting to be called, like freedom is still a rumor. And I wondered, quietly, how long it would take before my body learned that it's allowed to rest, that it's allowed to belong to me again.
There's a small church 2 blocks from the halfway house. I passed it a few times on my walks, never gave it much thought. Old brick, faded sign, a crooked cross above the door like it leaned a little from time or wind. That afternoon, something pulled me there. Not faith, I don't have that. Not hope, not guilt. Just curiosity maybe, or the need for quiet that didn't come with walls and metal doors. The side door was unlocked. I stepped inside. No one greeted me. No candles, no choir. Just rows of wooden pews and dust dancing in the light from the high windows. It smelled like age, like stillness. I didn't sit in the front or the back, just somewhere in the middle, alone. I didn't bow my head, didn't close my eyes. I just sat, listened. The building breathed differently than my room. The silence here wasn't empty, it was full. Not like prison silence, where you're afraid of your own thoughts. This was a different kind. Like the room was saying, you don't have to explain anything here. I let my hands rest on the back of the pew in front of me. I looked around. No one came. No voices. No pressure. I thought about praying. Not out of belief, but just to hear my own voice in a place that might forgive it. But I didn't. I just breathed. Counted it. One breath, then another, then another. And for those few minutes, I didn't feel judged. Didn't feel broken. Didn't feel like a number or a file or a memory someone tried to erase. I just felt like a man in a building, being quiet. And that, oddly enough, felt holy. I left without lighting a candle, without speaking, without meeting anything. But something stayed with me as I stepped back into the noise of the street, a sense that maybe I didn't need to be fixed. Maybe I just needed somewhere to sit still without running.
I saw him again a few nights later. Same steps, same blanket around his shoulders, same 1,000-yard stare. He was sitting outside the laundromat just like before, as if the last time had never ended. I didn't think twice. Walked over, sat down a few feet away. No words, just the same quiet recognition between 2 men who weren't trying to impress or explain. I handed him another cigarette. He nodded. Didn't think you'd come back, he said. I shrugged. Didn't think I would either. We lit up. The flame between us flickered, then settled. He exhaled slow, like every breath cost something. Then he looked at me. Not with pity, not with curiosity, just with that same strange clarity. You still trying to figure out how to be free? He asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He smiled. Not cruel, not kind, just real. Most people think freedom means doors stay open, he said. But it's not about the doors. It's about what you carry with you when you walk through them. I nodded slowly. The words sank deep, landed somewhere between my ribs and my spine. Out here, he continued, you've still got walls. They're just invisible now, made of memory, shame, fear. And if you ain't careful, you'll build yourself a whole new cell, one that moves with you. He took another drag. The trick is knowing when to stop building. I sat in that, let it settle, let it sting, because I knew he was right. I'd carried so many bricks out of that place, bricks made of silence, control, survival, and I'd been stacking them around me every day since, slowly, quietly, with good intentions. But a cage is a cage, no matter how soft the light is. I didn't say goodbye when I stood up, just nodded. He nodded back, and for the first time,
I felt like someone on the outside had said something real to me. No filter, no fear, just truth. And truth, I was learning, could be heavy, but it could also be freeing.
Back in the room, I didn't turn on the light. Just sat at the desk with the street lamp outside casting a soft glow through the window. The notebook was still there, untouched since the day I opened it and left the page blank. Tonight, I didn't want blank. I wanted to put something down. Anything. Not a plan, not a list, just a voice. I flipped to a new page, picked up the pen, and without thinking, I wrote at the top, "To the man I am right now." That line alone felt heavy, like saying, "You exist." I paused, then kept writing. I don't know who you are yet. I don't know if you're worth anything, but I know you're still here, and I know that means something. You've carried weight that most people can't see. You've built walls around your heart so you wouldn't shatter, and now, brick by brick, you're trying to take them down without getting crushed. That's brave, even if it doesn't feel like it. You want to heal, but you're terrified of who you'll be without the pain. You want to forgive yourself, but you don't think you deserve it. Still, you're showing up. You're breathing. You're trying. That counts for something. I stopped. My hand was shaking. I hadn't written anything this long in years. I stared at the page, read it again. It didn't sound wise, it didn't sound strong, but it sounded true. I signed the bottom with just an initial. Not because I was hiding, but because I still wasn't sure what name belonged to this version of me. I closed the notebook, sat back, exhaled, and whispered, "I'm not gone. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, I was starting to come back."
The day before I got out, I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel relieved. Mostly I felt tired. The kind of tired that settles in your bones when you've spent too long pretending you're not scared. Word had come down that morning. Paperwork approved, time served, release in 24 hours. A few guys in the block nodded. One said, "Lucky bastard." I didn't answer. There was nothing lucky about any of it. I packed my things, what little I had, books, letters, a photo I didn't look at much anymore. Then I sat on my bunk and stared at the floor. For hours, not thinking, just breathing, trying to understand what it meant to leave, what it meant to walk out and not know who you were on the other side. That night I couldn't sleep. I just lay there counting heartbeats. In the morning they walked me through the usual steps, change into old clothes, sign papers, stand still, and then one of the guards, a guy named Harper, older, quiet, kept to himself, looked at me as I signed the last form. He didn't smile, didn't shake my hand. He just said, "Make sure you use the silence right." That's all. Then he handed me the bag and pointed to the gate. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Just another thing said by someone who wanted to sound deep. But now, sitting in this room, notebook still warm from the letter I wrote to myself, his words came back, clear as glass. Use the silence. Not fear it, not fill it, not drown in it. Use it. Let it speak. Let it teach. Let it show you who you are when no one else is watching. I wonder if Harper knew what he was giving me in that sentence. Maybe he did. Maybe he was just tired of watching men walk out hollow. Either way, it stuck. And maybe now, just now, I'm starting to understand what it means.
I went back to the same grocery store, the one I walked out of weeks ago without buying anything. It wasn't a big decision. I didn't stand outside building up courage. I just went in. No dramatic music, no deep breath at the door. I walked through the sliding glass, grabbed a basket, and headed to the bread aisle. Same shelves, same brands, same 2 bright lights overhead. But it didn't feel like an attack this time. Just a store. Just a place with things on shelves. I picked up a loaf. Nothing fancy, just whole wheat, store brand. The kind my mom used to buy when we were kids. I held it in my hand, felt the weight of it, the texture of the plastic, and nodded to myself like I'd just passed some unspoken test. I added a few more things, milk, bananas, a pack of gum, things I actually needed. I moved through the aisles like a man, not a ghost. And when I got to the register, the woman behind the counter smiled. Maybe she recognized me, maybe not. But I met her eyes, let the moment be what it was. "Find everything okay?" she asked. I nodded. Yeah, I did. My voice was steady, not forced, not flat, real. She scanned the items. I paid. She handed me the bag. "Have a good day," she said. I paused, held the bag in one hand, looked at her, just for a second, then said, "Thank you." 2 words, small, ordinary, but this time I meant them. I walked out into the sun, bag swinging lightly at my side, and felt something shift in my chest. Not pride, not triumph, just presence. I was here. I was functioning. I was living. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.
There's a park not far from the house. Nothing fancy, just a few benches, a path that loops around a pond, and a crooked tree that leans like it's tired but still standing. I went there after the store, sat on a bench near the water, bag of groceries beside me. The sun was low, not quite setting, but starting to think about it. Kids ran past me, chasing each other, yelling about things that didn't matter, and somehow mattered more than anything. An old man fed ducks with pieces of white bread. A couple sat across the pond, sharing earbuds, laughing at something I couldn't hear. I didn't feel like a ghost. I didn't feel like an intruder. I didn't even feel like I had to belong. I just was. I leaned back, stretched my legs, let the breeze move over my face. I didn't think about the past. I didn't dig through memories. I didn't try to make sense of anything. I just watched, listened, felt the sun on my skin, the smell of grass, the sound of kids' feet on gravel. And it hit me. This is life. Not the big moments, not the turning points, just this. A warm bench, a soft wind, breathing in rhythm with everything around me. I didn't need to justify it. Didn't need to tell myself I was healing. I didn't even need to say I deserved it. I just sat there, quiet, open, still. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing. I wasn't bracing for anything. I wasn't surviving. I was living. And no one noticed. No one clapped. No music swelled in the background. Just a man on a bench, holding nothing, needing nothing. Finally understanding that sometimes peace doesn't arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it just sits beside you, silently, waiting for you to stop looking for it. I remembered one of the last moments I had with Ray. It wasn't deep. It wasn't dramatic. We were just sitting on the edge of the yard during rec. 2 plastic chairs in a corner where no one really bothered us. He had his eyes closed, face tilted slightly toward the sun. I was next to him, quiet. We didn't talk much that day. We never really needed to. After a while, he opened one eye, looked at me, and said, "You don't owe the world a speech, just presence." Then he went back to resting. That was it. No follow-up, no explanation. I nodded because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But truthfully, I didn't get it. Not then. Not when I was still wrapped up in my guilt, my silence, my invisible armor. I thought presence meant standing tall, proving something, fixing everything. I thought it meant performing strength until it became real. But now, sitting on that bench earlier, listening to nothing and everything, I finally heard him. Really heard him. You don't owe the world a speech. Just presence. You don't need to explain your scars. You don't need to beg for a seat at the table. You don't have to narrate your healing. Just presence. Just be there. Fully. Quietly. Honestly. That's enough. It took me years to understand what he meant. And now that he's gone, I wish I could tell him. But maybe he already knew. Maybe that was the point. He didn't need to be remembered for his past. He just wanted to be witnessed as real. And now, through his words, through his silence, I feel him with me. Not haunting, not echoing. Just walking quietly beside me. Like a shadow that doesn't darken the light, but proves it's there.
The message came in the afternoon. I was folding laundry, something so normal it almost felt like pretending, when the phone buzzed. I checked the screen. Same number. My brother. I hesitated. Heart caught in my throat. Then I opened it. I don't know what to say, it read. But I figured I'd try again anyway. No pressure. I just want you to know I still think about you. That was it. Just that. No questions, no demands, no guilt. Just a few honest words that said, "You still matter." I sat down on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. For the first time, I didn't panic. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself or fix anything. I didn't hear judgment in his words, only space, like he was offering me a place to stand. I looked at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a reply. My fingers hovered over the keys. I typed slowly, thoughtfully. No rehearsed speech, no defense, just me. I'm still here. Not sure who I am yet, but I'm working on it. And I'm glad you wrote. I read it back twice. It didn't sound perfect, but it sounded real. I hit send. The message disappeared into the ether, into the quiet stretch of digital sky between two people trying to remember how to speak again. I put the phone down, sat there in the stillness, and for the first time I didn't feel like I had to brace for what came next. I had spoken, and that was enough.
I said at the beginning that I wouldn't tell you what I did, that maybe I'd save it for the end. Maybe that was fear talking, or shame, with a part of me that still thought silence could erase a truth. But silence doesn't erase anything. It just buries it deeper. So, here it is. I was 29, working in a small construction firm. I wasn't rich, wasn't desperate, just angry. One night I got into a fight outside a bar. Stupid, fast,
emotional. The guy bumped me, words turned to shoves, shoves turned to fists. He went down hard, hit his head on the curb. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to almost kill him. But I did. He was in the hospital for weeks. I got arrested the same night, charged with aggravated assault. No priors, no excuses. I took a plea. 5 years. I told myself at the time that it was unfair, that he started it, that I was drunk, that I didn't know what I was doing. But the truth is, I did. I made a choice. Not to hurt him, maybe, but to lose control. To believe for 1 second that my pain gave me permission. And that second changed everything. He recovered, eventually. I wrote him a letter once while I was inside. He never responded. I don't blame him. I wouldn't have either. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm done hiding from it. It happened. It's part of me. And carrying that quietly hasn't made it go away. So now I carry it loudly. Not for forgiveness, not for redemption. Just because truth, like Ray said, will rot you slower than lies ever will. That moment cost me years. Cost me people. Cost me pieces of myself I'm still trying to get back. But at least now, when I say I'm here, I say it as a whole person. One with mistakes, one with weight, one with a story that no longer owns me.
I went out that night with no plan, no place to be, no clock to race. Just me, a jacket, and streets that finally felt less like strangers. The city glowed in its usual rhythm. Traffic lights, neon signs, muffled laughter behind windows. I walked slower this time. Not hiding, not scanning, just moving. Noticed things I hadn't before. The way trees leaned toward the streetlights. The sound of someone playing jazz through a cracked window. The smell of bread from the bakery that stayed open too late. Nobody looked at me, and for the first time, I didn't twist that into loneliness. I wasn't invisible. I was just a part of it all. Present, walking through the noise without needing to mute it. I passed people, young couples, delivery guys, a man yelling into a phone. None of them knew where I'd been. None of them knew what I carried. But I didn't shrink, didn't hunch my shoulders, didn't lower my eyes. I let them see me, even if they weren't looking. And maybe more important, I let myself be seen. I stopped on a corner, watched the world turn green and red, thought about how much time I'd spent trying to vanish, how much energy I gave to not existing loudly. And now, here I was, not searching for meaning, not chasing forgiveness, just breathing on the sidewalk at 10:42 p.m., feeling the wind against my face and knowing quietly that I belonged in this moment, that the city didn't have to know my name for me to exist inside it. I didn't have a destination. I wasn't lost. I was just walking. And for the first time, that was enough.
I ended up on the bridge, same one I passed a dozen times before. Same rust on the rails, same hum of cars passing behind me. Below, the river moved slow and dark, like it was carrying secrets too tired to rise. I leaned forward, arms resting on the metal, and looked down. Not in the way I once did, wondering what it would feel like to disappear. Just watching, listening, letting the wind touch my face without resistance. I stood there for a long time. No music in my ears, no voices in my head,
Just the night and the water and the weight of being alive. I thought about everything. About Ray, about Travis, about Emma, about my brother, about the version of me who walked into prison thinking silence was safety, and the one who walked out thinking maybe freedom was a myth. I thought about the man who couldn't buy bread, the one who froze in front of a grocery shelf like the wrong loaf would break him, the one who wrote letters and didn't send them, the one who whispered truths in empty rooms just to hear his own voice again. And I thought, this is it. Not the end, not the answer, just the moment where the noise finally fades and what's left is whatever you're willing to face. I didn't close my eyes, didn't make a wish, didn't pray. I just looked at the water and said out loud to no one, I'm still here. That's it. 3 words. No apology, no performance, just presence. Real, unhidden, whole. The wind blew a little harder. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The night didn't answer, but it didn't push me away either. That, I think, was its way of saying, welcome back.